Hey everyone, it's Strange Michael. I hope you're doing well today. Well, I had to skip the previous movie in this series for Friday the 13th because I already reviewed Freddy vs. Jason last year. So as I said in my previous review for Jason X, I move along past that and now I'm on the 2009 remake here. This is the uncut version, but I'll be honest with you, I saw this in theaters back in the day. It's a movie that means a lot to me. I have a lot of fond memories towards this remake, but it's really not that different from most of these films. And frankly, Freddy vs. Jason's better, obviously. But I've always liked this one. I have some good memories with it. And I do want to talk very fondly about it in this review because of how much I like about it. And even this time around, rewatching it for like the billionth time, I think it still holds up fairly well. Very controversial way to start off the video, but before I get into that, let me start off saying this. Of course, as many of you know, if you've been following the reviews for the Friday the 13th movies I've been doing, I collabed with a couple of people, one being Stranger Grayson, who is a good friend of mine, and another guy is a friend of mine named Goosebumps Boy, and I put both of the links to their channels in my description section so you can check them out. I highly recommend both of them, really good reviewers. Goosebumps Boy hadn't been able to review a couple of the movies, but he was able to talk about this. I haven't listened to his video yet, but I'll get to that. So Friday the 13th, 2009. From 2004 onward, we kept hearing all over the internet about how you were going to have a new Freddy vs. Jason 2 at some point. And then it never happened. I remember seeing fake posters. I remember seeing so much on my back-in-the-day flip phone, on the internet, on the browser on that phone, trying to find out when was this thing coming out. It never happened. Well, around, I want to say about 2008, I started hearing about the remake that was being made. And I wasn't on the internet as actively in 2008. I mean, I might have a time here and there with a cousin of mine that we might look at like CartoonNetwork.com or StarWars.com before Disney bought it, obviously. And then I was somewhere. I think I was at like a 7-Eleven. And I bought my first and only Fangoria magazine. And it happened to be this one right here about the Friday the 13th remake. I have had this since before that movie came out in 2009. This was a cool little magazine. You know, of course, it's horror focused. It's still around nowadays, but this one actually mentioned not only the Friday the 13th remake, but also My Bloody Valentine, which they came out pretty close to each other, man. And they talked about in here, too. Of course, you have the two leads from Supernatural, the TV show. Jared Padalecki is in Friday the 13th. You have Jensen Ackles, who is a great actor, too, that's over in My Bloody Valentine. And I feel like Jensen got the poor deal here, because the Friday the 13th remake is good. My Bloody Valentine, in my opinion, is a very, very, very mixed bag with some really shitty 3D. I have friends who love it, like my friend Horror Free For All, who I tease all the time about this shit. But, I've had that magazine forever, and I remember sitting down in my room and reading through this and just being so excited about this movie, and then eventually it came out. I saw it on premiere weekend, I think on a Sunday, like 2 days after it had come out. I saw this in the theaters with my aunt, her boyfriend, and my cousin. My cousin I've seen a lot of movies with in the past. I saw Iron Man 2 with the kid, and we have been like brothers for a long time. But I remember when this came out, we both loved it. And we could not for the life of us understand why everybody else hated this. Let me do the math really quick. I was 15 when this movie came out. And I am 28, turning 29. Jesus Christ. It's almost been 15 years as of next year that this movie's been around. I've enjoyed it the whole time. So did he. We could not understand the hate for this movie. We both, mainly me, not so much him, but we were both pretty die-hard Friday the 13th fans. But when we went to see this, he had only seen Jason X, he had seen Freddy vs. Jason, a couple other ones on TV I had shown him too that would come on like the Sci-Fi Channel or AMC Horror Fest. I got him into all of that. You know, just like he got me into like Grand Theft Auto games and stuff I had never heard of until he and I talked about it. And he loved this movie too. We still talk about it to this day when we hang out. And it's a very special memory to me. A matter of fact, the most interesting thing, I am fairly certain, I am almost 1,000% certain that this movie came out the week of Valentine's weekend. And that is, his birthday is Valentine's Day. And he's a little bit younger than me too. So we were hanging out watching this movie with my aunt and again her boyfriend at the theater. And it was an awkward encounter. It was an awkward encounter because this movie is so fucking sleazy, and it has a lot of nudity in it. There is a sex scene that probably goes on at least 10 minutes of this hour and 40-minute long movie. That every time we cut away to something really interesting, then we cut back to these two doing whatever they're doing, and it just keeps going on and on and on. But let me tell you this, I think that the remake gets the worst reputation ever. It is not something like the Nightmare on Elm Street remake, which came out the next year, 2010, that I can understand a lot of the hate, but I love Jackie Earle Haley there. This movie, the remake, has so much great in it. Not good, great in it. That I can overlook a lot of the bad. Most fans can't do that, but I've seen so many comments in my reviews as I've been going through the series with Stranger Grayson, with Goosebumps Boy, talking about how people couldn't wait to hear my thoughts on it, because I had hinted numerous times and just kind of outright said a couple of times in the more recent videos that I'm a big fan of this movie. I really am. I really enjoy it a lot. I'm still looking for a really good Derek Mears Jason Voorhees figure. It's my personal favorite design for Jason I've ever seen in any of these movies. I will stand by it's my favorite performance of Jason Voorhees. Derek Mears killed it as Jason here. This movie did something that Horror Free For All pointed out to me a while back on his channel, on some different things he had commented before on previous videos of mine, of this movie being a great mishmash of the first four original 1980 Friday the 13th movies, all the way to the final chapter. It's a good matchup, and a mashup too, of all of those things into one really cool movie, and I think he landed and just hit that damn nail right on top of his head. That is the best way to describe this movie, and I'd never thought about that as many times as I've seen this movie since 2009. For a while there, I was watching it twice a summer, because I loved it so much, and I thought it was so damn good. And I feel a little different now. The older I've gotten, the more my taste has changed, the more I'm kind of nostalgic for some of the previous films more. But I still love this. I still think this is one of those ones like the 2007, like the Part 7, A New Blood, that is so heavily underrated that I cannot believe how much people hate these two movies so much. So much. It's kind of sad, frankly. Where do I even begin with this? It is a remake, but if you had cut off the beginning of this film, this is basically the ending of the original 1980 movie, with Mrs. Voorhees, Pamela Voorhees, getting decapitated, Jason witnessing that. If you had cut that prologue of this movie off and had just had it be a new Friday the 13th movie, I'm telling you, people would have loved it. I'm convinced the fans would have loved it. Friday the 13th fans, to me, are the biggest, typically, not always, but typically some of the most controversial people to talk to on the internet because they typically don't know what they want, in my opinion. From what I've experienced in the past, they, very much like the Halloween fans, don't get what they actually want. You either have people that will defend shit like Halloween Ends, or you will have people defend shit like Friday the 13th Part 9, or they'll try to say like, oh, well, you know, Parts 1 through 6 are the only good ones of the Friday the 13th films minus 5. Part 5, that is. I do not understand that. I don't understand where you're coming from. I think most of them have something valuable in them, but not all of them. You know what I mean? Friday the 13th Part 9, the final chapter, Final Friday, Jason Goes to Hell, whatever the fuck it's called, is awful. It's truly awful. It has some great kills, some of the best kills of the series, but it's a fucking mess, and Adam Marcus killed that series at that point. 2001's Jason X, fucking mess. It really is. Part 8, fucking mess, but it's not awful. You know, I like that more than I like Jason X, I think. And I grew up on Jason X more than Part 8. I don't know how to feel about a lot of it, but a lot of fans piss me off in a lot of fandoms that I'm a part of, like Star Wars, for example, because modern Star Wars fans, they're fucking weirdos. Like, dude, they want, like, the bad guys and the good guys to kiss and hug and shit, and I'm like, can you please stop doing that to everything? Can we stop making the bad guy into a reasonable person? Can we stop doing that, please? Anyway, people constantly hate on this movie in the franchise and in the fandom, and I don't understand it. I can't agree with people who tell me this is a bad movie. I can't. I think it's extremely well made, of course, directed by Marcus Nispel, who directed the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake from 2003, I think, somewhere in there. I thought he did a great job there. Watching this again, though, I had said in my review for that remake for Texas Chainsaw that I thought that he did very well there, and I thought that at the time that was a better directed movie than this, but frankly, I think I like this better now. I think the directing, camera work, and all of that are better here because of Marcus Nispel. That dude never got the credit that he deserved. A lot of his directing style is very Michael Bay-like, aside from the explosions and whatever. If Michael Bay directed a horror film, that's what I feel like it would be like, a Marcus Nispel movie. And I don't hate it entirely. I think the style transfers over pretty well, in my opinion. But this is a movie that I just think is unfairly hated, and I'm going to defend it tremendously. But like I said, you have people who, for whatever reason, love things like, in the Halloween fandom, they love Halloween 2018, they hate Halloween Kills. I don't get it. I don't understand what the fuck people want out of Halloween. If they love 2018, they hated Kills. Kills, to me, yeah, it's a little bit of a sloppy movie with a weird, what is it? The thing that all the people keep chanting in the film. What is it called? I can't even remember right now, because I'm just so flooded with so many thoughts about Friday the 13th. But you know what I mean. That movie, to me, just had so much fun to it and so much gore to it. The kills were brutal in Halloween Kills. And all of the fans hated it but me and a couple of other people I know. And that's it. That's it. And then Halloween Ends comes out. People hate it even more, which I understand because it's a piece of shit. But then people, like, the shills that are getting paid to, like, say that it's good because they're determined that it's a good movie, and it's not. It's a bad Halloween movie with a decent subplot about romance on the side, a serial killer story, whatever, on the side. That could have been a different movie. It should not have been a Halloween film. It shouldn't have been a Michael Myers movie, for that matter. Anyway, back to this. Friday the 13th's remake is chock full of humor, jokes, and I think a lot of that works. They're trying to create their own Friday the 13th weirdo, creepy pervert moments. Sometimes, like the one guy, there's a redneck in this movie that licks a magazine, a nudie magazine. So you can imagine what he licked in that magazine. We had to watch him do it. Stuff like that is as cringy, but also hilariously awful as something like the singing scene in the outhouse of part 5, you know, with Reggie's brother. I think this film was filled with shit like that, and I love it. It's mainly just focused on a group of kids after that prologue of Jason and witnessing his mom get her head chopped off. Jason is the smartest Jason we've ever had. I will stand by that as long as I live. There's a lot of really cool throwbacks to him being, like, hung, like in part 3, or like, he starts off as Baghead Jason, by the way. We see him killing people with the potato sack on his head, and that is pretty rad looking. It actually looks more like a pillow sheet than actually, like, a bag of potatoes, you know? He actually looks like he has like a pillow sheet wrapped around his head. Or pillowcase, whatever. And I think it looks fucking cool. I think it looks better than the original Part 2 Jason with the bag over his head. It looks freaking sick. And Derek Mears, again, he is humongous, dude. This is a cage fighter, and he is ginormous. He has to be like 6'6.5", somewhere in there. As in like 6.5 feet. You know, the dude is huge. He's humongous, and he's muscular, too. This is like a ripped Jason, dude. And he has, like, this really veiny neck. And when he eventually gets the hockey mask, he looks even better. He just looks fucking incredible. It's the best Jason we've ever had in any of these movies. I will stand by it. Say what you want about Kane Hodder. Derek Mears got one movie and topped everything Kane Hodder did, in my opinion. I think Kane Hodder's good, but Derek Mears is better. This movie, again, like Jackie Earle Haley in the the Nightmare remake, he just killed it. He made this movie, you know? Now, we have kind of a group of kids, and they're kind of like, the one guy is rich, his dad owns a cabin out in the middle of nowhere. It's kind of more like a house than a cabin, but it's out at a place, I assume, near Camp Crystal Lake, where an old lake house used to be and stuff. That's kind of our main plot, but we really, even before we get to that, we have kind of a Death Proof situation. If you've seen that Quentin Tarantino movie, you start off with a group of campers that are going to look for pot leaves in a specific location that somebody had told them about. And while they're going out to this place, they encounter Jason and get fucking brutalized. And then, like halfway through the film, we start all over again. Death Proof does the same thing. And I hated that about Death Proof. I don't like it about this movie either. But the main storyline we follow, which, by the way, that segment I just talked about is like 20 minutes of the movie. It's an hour and 40 minutes long. You have a prologue, then you have that first group of not counselors, but potheads and stuff. And gratuitous sex scenes and flashing scenes and stuff, like I said. Some really great kills thrown in this entire film. Some of the best kills in the whole series are in this movie, too. I stand by that as well. Some of the best effects from Friday the 13th are in this movie as well. Not even done by Tom Savini, you know, which is shocking how good they are. Some of the best casting in Friday the 13th is in this movie. Not just Derek Mears, but some of the other kids that we follow to this house that the rich kid's parents have. The rich kid, by the way, in this movie is named Trent. He also played like a guy in the first Transformers Michael Bay movie. I fucking couldn't stand him there or here. He's supposed to play like an asshole, and he plays an asshole here, being a rich kid. And he's great at what he plays. I really like this actor. He's really good. Makes you hate his guts every single time. And he's with Danielle Panabaker, who is from The Flash and from some old Disney Channel stuff I used to watch when I was a kid. Really good actress. She's here as well as kind of his girlfriend, which how the fuck did that really sweet girl get caught up with this asshole? But they bring some friends along as well. There's two particular guys I love. There's a black guy and an Asian guy. And they are both so funny and so quotable and so memorable. They are to me, aside from Jared Padalecki in this film from Supernatural, they are some of the most memorable characters of this film. They are what I watch this movie for almost always because of the jokes that the Asian guy makes. For example, he makes a joke when he's stuck on the back of the SUV they're traveling in to get to this house out in the woods about how babies have more room in the uterus than he has in that trunk of that car. That shit has made me laugh since I saw this in theaters with my cousin and my aunt and her boyfriend. I will stand by that till the day I die. Good jokes in this movie. Really enjoyed that. Some of them seem a little too improv for me, which was a problem because this was post-Iron Man from 2008. Probably made around the same time as Iron Man, but it's an issue that started to leak its way into Hollywood over time with improv, and MCU shit has made it even worse. Everybody's a fucking comedian now. Have you noticed that? Every single fucking movie, somebody has to have a moment that stops a serious moment so somebody can make a dumb, corny-ass joke. That happens constantly. You kind of picked up on that in this movie. Just a little bit. But I don't hate it. I don't hate it. The improv here is not always great, but it can be decent, aside from something like the redneck I talked about, who licks a magazine in front of us. It makes me cringe every time I think about it. And then we have another side story in here that's kind of the reference from Part 4. One of the early campers in this movie was kidnapped by Jason. She happens to look just like his mom, and the locket that has a picture of him and her in it. Which, by the way, we never get to see Jason as an adult without his mask. You get like a blurred image of him in the lake one time. You get a blurred image at one point of him in the darkness with the redneck. You never really get to see it out front in the open like you did in some of the previous films from the series, which to me was always a massive letdown when I was a kid. But if you buy the Derek Mears figure, or you look at the behind-the-scenes photos and stuff, you can see him without the mask, and it looks really great. It's probably the most horrific-looking Jason I've ever seen. It's fantastic. I love it. Excuse me. But, where was I going? Oh yeah, there's a story from Part 4 of a character who is a hitchhiker that goes to Tommy Jarvis, Corey Feldman's house, and he's looking for his sister who was killed in one of the previous movies, I think in Part 1. In this, you have the same thing. Jared Padalecki has like a motorcycle, his mom died, he's looking for his sister who took care of their mom, who was apparently killed or possibly just gone missing, he doesn't know yet, back from the beginning of the movie, that we saw the first group of counselors get attacked and brutalized. And he's looking around for her. She's being held hostage. He doesn't know that. The tension building of him looking for his sister, the anxiety around that, is really nice. I like that a lot. I think it really works for the most part. And I enjoy that quite a bit about this movie. His motorcycle is great, too. Jared Padalecki is a good actor. He and Danielle Panabaker do a really good job in this movie as well. I stand by that. I always will. That they really make this movie worth watching. But Jared, there's just something cool about the guy. I've always liked him. Even this Walker Texas Ranger prequel remake, whatever the fuck it is, that he did, I still want to check it out because it's him, but it also worries me because it's fucking CW, you know, and you can't trust the CW with anything. Anything they touch, they will shit on, with political ideology and everything. So, I don't know. Maybe it's worth it, maybe it's not. But it is Jared Padalecki, and I've always liked the guy. Really good actor. This is the first thing I ever saw him in, by the way. I'd never seen Supernatural at this point, and he was very well known for Supernatural by this point. It was kind of like in the beginning of the peaking of that show from a lot of people. But he's really good here, and I think he really, really brings that brotherly love for his sister to life in a good way. I think his performance is really strong, and his will to find his sister is really nice. A lot of the time when he encounters Jason, or the kids at the lake house thing I talked about encounter Jason, stuff is brutal, man. The Derek Mears Jason will fuck you up. He is terrifying. He was the first time I've ever actually been kind of afraid of Jason Voorhees. I'd grown up on so many of these movies, and then watching this, seeing how brutal this Jason can be. The kills aren't always the most creative, but the brutality of them, the brutality of he will just smash your head into every glass window he can possibly find, is phenomenal. I love it. I love it every single time I watch this. It makes you feel the kills. It's not just about like how creative they are, like a lot of Friday fans wanted. Some of them are creative, but the ones that aren't, something as simple as a neck cut or something, they make you feel it. They really do. This was also around the time, too, where shaky cam was a massive issue in movies. A lot of the time when there's a fight or a struggle, the camera is everywhere, dude. It drives me nuts. Every time I watch it, I just can't stand that about this movie. It makes you kind of nauseous looking at it. But other than that, I think it's a good flick. There's not really anything else to talk about with the story. The writing for the stuff doesn't feel incredible, but the performances are good from pretty much everybody. Again, certain characters you're going to hate, like Trent, the guy that's rich, or like the two that I talked about, the black guy and the Asian guy, I think are super funny. I really, really love them. Good performers, really good actors in this. I hope they show up in more if they haven't already. I always thought when I was younger the black guy was Michael B. Jordan, who played, like, you know, the Human Torch, played Creed. I love Michael B. Jordan. It's not him. I don't believe so. But I really, really, really enjoyed this movie when I was a kid, and I still enjoy it. It's not as much of an enjoyment as when I was a kid, but you know, I still like it a lot. I still think it has a lot to offer. It's looking visually beautiful. They take really good advantage of the lake that they shoot at. But again, there's kind of like this... Okay, so like I said in my review for Part 5, there's good sleaziness, it's almost too much sleazy, like Part 5 of the series, and then you have something like this where it's just like, oh, it's time for me to take my top off, and they do that constantly in this movie, and it annoys the shit out of me. There's so much nudity in this movie that I could never really recommend it to anybody when I was younger, because it kind of felt a little bit of like a shame for it, and that was around the time I had seen Part 5, but I'd only seen it on like TV at the time, too, so I didn't know how much nudity was in that movie. But this movie has, like, as much nudity as Part 5. There's a lot of it, dude. It kind of makes you uncomfortable a little bit, but there's a lot of it, needless to say. But the kills kind of match up with that. There's so much blood and gore, and that stuff is super fun. There's this one scene of somebody in a lake, and a boat is coming towards them, and she smacks her head on that boat, and every time I think about it, I laugh, because of the sound effect they use for it. It reminds me of Sleepaway Camp, the original, just a little bit. Maybe it was a throwback to that. There's a lot of references in this film to a lot of the Friday the 13th stuff, but maybe that was a Sleepaway Camp throwback. I don't know. Maybe. The CGI practical effects, there mostly seem to be practical effects in this film. There is a little bit of touching up with some CGI blood here and there. Not a whole lot, though. It's not like My Bloody Valentine where everything seems like it's always CGI blood for the matter of the 3D effect. It doesn't seem like that. I could be wrong, but I feel like this came out in 3D. I could be wrong, but I'm fairly certain this did. And I feel like I have a 3D set of glasses with Friday the 13th written on it somewhere in this house. I'm convinced I do, but I'm probably wrong. But maybe I'm not. I don't know. The music in here, super generic. Super, super generic. So don't go into it looking for that. You don't have like the typical Harry Manfredini music. He didn't do the music for here as far as I know. But you have a lot of your typical generic horror movie music from that time. Like you might have like kind of a bassy thumping, that kind of thing. That's really it. That's all you really have. But the music is not what you come to Friday the 13th for, matter of fact. Maybe some of the older films, but not so much this one. But other than that, that is my review for the Friday the 13th 2009 remake. Have you guys seen it? What do you think about it? I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments about this movie down in the comment section down below. This review will probably cause a lot of discourse over the shit I said about the fan community of this. But it's true. It's true. Stop hating on this film. If it had not had the prologue to this movie and was just a straight-up Jason doing random shit movie, like what he did here, if you didn't have the prologue with Mrs. Voorhees, this could have been just another Friday the 13th movie, and people would have loved it. I still stand by that to this day, because people are slowly coming around to this movie. People my age are coming around to how much they like this, admitting they liked it, and not just having the groupthink issue of saying it's bad because people think it's bad. Fuck that. If you like the movie, like it. That's all I have to say. This is a good flick. I got it for $3 at Big Lots because people hate it so much. Years ago when I worked there, I saw this in there, hadn't bought it for whatever reason, I went ahead and grabbed it. Maybe I had it and I got rid of my copy years ago. I don't know. But I've always liked it, and I've always liked this picture of Jason. Really cool. I remember when the trailer for this movie came out, and I rewatched that trailer over and over and over again. Of course, Halloween had let me down so much. And then H2 came out the same year as this, and I remember loving that. I think it was after this movie that came out that year, in October or something. But I remember loving the trailer for this movie and watching it over and over and over again. So you have to understand the context of the time here. We had this movie at the beginning of 2009. By the end of the year, we had Halloween 2 from Rob Zombie, which I also love. It's a mess, but I love it. And then the next year, not too far away, you had a new Nightmare on Elm Street remake. Now, again, I love Jackie Earle Haley there. I love Derek Mears here. I love Tyler Mane as Michael Myers. In that time frame, I had 3 movies that I really, 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 really enjoyed quite a bit. And I loved the Nightmare remake when it first came out, too. It's definitely not good. The older I've gotten, the worse it gets. But I had elements of all 3 of these films that I loved so much. And it just fed into my love for horror. It fed into my obsession with those 3 monsters. How much I loved slasher movies when I was a kid. I remember showing my mom this for the first time ever after it had come out on DVD. And she fucking hated it. She hated it so much. I haven't seen her watch it ever since. But, yeah, whatever. Them's the breaks, I guess. Anyway, if I had to rate the Friday the 13th remake on a 5-star basis, again, it doesn't really matter if it's killer cut, theatrical cut, it's all the same. I'm telling you, it's the same movie I saw in theaters. Killer cut is a goddamn lie. Anyway, if I had to rate it on a 5-star basis, I am honestly leaning towards... It's a little bit half and half, like I said, with the humor and stuff. I'm leaning towards about a 4 out of 5 stars. It's kind of a weak 4, though. It's kind of a weak 4 out of 5 stars for me. But it's one that I always look forward to getting past Jason Goes to Hell and Jason X to get to this movie when I do marathon them. And I usually marathon them every year, but I'm trying to get better about only watching the ones that I really, really enjoy and just kind of skipping the ones that I think suck ass, like Part 3, to try to get to the good ones like this from now on. So we'll see what happens in the future. But anyway, with that being said, what are your thoughts on the remake? Again, I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments down below. Let me know your comments on what I commented about, because I know my opinion has to be controversial, because this is a movie that I love quite a bit for a lot of nostalgic reasons, and maybe that's the reason I love it, but there are certain things I think are not debatable about, like Derek Mears being the best Jason. I will stand on that fucking hill until the day I die. He is the best Jason ever, and he will always be, as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, thank you all for watching. At some point, I will get these ranked. It might be a couple of days from now. It might be tomorrow. I don't know yet. It could be all the way until Friday. I don't know. It kind of depends on how things go this week. I've had so much recording I did today for a bunch of other stuff from my other channel, Night of the Living Dude, that, you know, it is what it is. But I'm kind of thinking I'm going to take a day break or so to kind of really map out what I think of how I would rank these movies. There's 12 of them, and I have a lot to say about all of them, but I want to kind of keep it concise and short, you know, as I review them or rank them or whatever. Because I'm going to have a very controversial list, I'll be honest with you. Some of my picks probably have already kind of been ruined for a lot of you. But there are movies in this franchise that I love a lot, that I think most people hate, that I think deserve a lot more love. And there are some that people love, like Part 3 I just referenced a minute ago, that I think fucking suck. And I will stand on that hill too. And it's going to be low, really low on that list. So 12 movies I have to rank. That's a lot of time spent on watching these and discussing them in these videos. I hope you enjoyed them. All these reviews were like a half an hour long. I am so sorry for all the rambling and shit, but I can't help it. I get excited talking to you guys. Anyway, thank you guys. God bless you all. Goodbye.